Nebraska spring ball is rapidly approaching. So in today's video, we're going to get a look at every single positional group on the Huskers roster, and we're going to rank them 1 to 8. We'll look over some of the best groups, some of the worst, and a couple surprises along the way. So real quick, if you like the content, please hit like button on this video. It really helps me out, along with subscribing to the channel so you don't miss out on any more Nebraska football content this offseason. But without further ado, let's get into it. Talking about Nebraska's roster before spring practice, and right off the bat, when I was researching for this video, when I was compiling my rankings, I noticed this is probably the best roster Nebraska has had in the last half decade plus. Matt Rhule is doing a phenomenal job, not only getting talent on the roster, but building depth in key areas. And that's something I want you to keep in note as I go over the rankings today. So we're going to look over every single positional group: quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, O-line, D-line, linebackers, and secondary, and we'll give them a ranking. So let's go worst to first, starting off with the number 8, the worst positional group on this team, and it's going to go to the tight ends. And this is a tight end room that I really wanted to transfer. You're probably going to start Nate Borkature in 2024. Thomas Fidone started a little bit last year. He's probably in the mix too. And other than those guys, you don't have anybody who's really played for Nebraska, really has any experience. You have Ishmael Smith-Flores, who's a redshirt freshman you hope can provide you a little bit of depth. And after that, you have 4 incoming true freshmen. So not much depth there. And this is a very big position in our offense. You see Marcus Satterfield, Matt Rhule, they love the tight end spot. They love to have usually 2 on the field at one time. They really like to get them involved. So there's a reason why Matt Rhule brought in Foreign in the 2024 class. But right now, you don't have a guy there. And we're talking about Thomas Fidone, who's super talented. I mean, I've sung his praises in the past, but we can't no longer put him to this bar of being a 4-star, 5-star. He's been on campus for 3.5 years, and he hasn't produced at all. At the end of the day, he's a middle-of-the-road, maybe less than middle-of-the-road, starting tight end in college football. And same deal with Nate Borkature. I think Nate Borkature is a really hard worker and has a great story. He was a walk-on, but at the end of the day, he doesn't move the needle. He's not an NFL guy. He's not really what you're looking for at that tight end spot as primarily a starter. And besides those two, you don't have anybody. So you're really hoping a guy like Carter Nelson can produce in his true freshman year. You're hoping a guy maybe like Ishmael Smith-Flores can play coming off a redshirt. But other than that, again, it's not a great room. You're hoping that it can be developed as it goes on. And the last thing I'm going to say about the tight end room is that when Matt Rhule was hired, he brought in Bob Wager, a head coach from high schools in Texas. You thought he was going to be really awesome. And then obviously, he left the program due to a DUI, and ever since then, there's been instability at that tight end coach spot. Now that Marcus Satterfield will take over there, we're hoping he can provide some more stability and start to develop these guys a little better. But tight ends, unfortunately, will come 8th in my rankings, the last. And number 7, I really hated to put here, is the quarterback spot. Yes, Dylan Raiola is going to be your quarterback 1 in 2024. No debate, no competition. He's going to be your guy. But we are not evaluating the quarterback room based on one player. We have to look at everybody involved. There are 3 total scholarships allocated in the quarterback room: Dylan Raiola, Heinrich Haarberg, Daniel Kaelin. You do not feel good about Heinrich Haarberg being your backup quarterback. We found out last fall that, he's not a true quarterback. He's not a true thrower of the football. He's not a very high IQ quarterback. He's not great with his progressions. He's not great reading the pocket, making good decisions. He's more, at best, a game manager quarterback who you can hope leading you to victory in a low-scoring affair, but that's really about as good as it gets for Heinrich Haarberg, and so much so that he might not even be playing quarterback by the time we get to the fall. It was reported by Sean Callahan that he will be working out with the tight ends along with the quarterbacks this spring. So I know Matt Rhule's kind of messed around with him being a tight end in the past. They're probably going to do that again, so watch out for it. Heinrich Haarberg probably won't even be your quarterback. And then Daniel Kaelin, I feel okay about him being a decent backup, at least his true freshman year, but you don't want to burn that red shirt. You do not want to burn that red shirt. You want to keep that in the back pocket, and that's the problem there. So I would have liked for Matt Rhule to get a veteran quarterback in that room specifically to be a backup. Unfortunately, like I've discussed before, that's super hard to find. When quarterbacks enter the transfer portal, they're not looking to be a backup. So we couldn't find one. That's okay. You're hoping that Dylan Raiola can stay healthy the entire year and basically be as good as we're projecting him to be. So that's number 7, the quarterback room. Now let's get to number 6, the linebacker room. So still one of the worst positional groups on this team, but definitely a lot better. You do lose a lot of talent there. You lose your 2 most productive linebackers, Nick Henrich and Luke Reimer. But there is a lot of talent, whether that's Mekhi Gabayer, who's one of my guys. You have MJ Sherman returning. You have Jamari Butler, who plays that jack spot. You have Stephon Thompson, who's coming in from Syracuse as a basically a veteran 1-year filler linebacker. So there's a lot of potential in there. There's a lot of young guys that I really like, whether that's Vincent Shavers or some of the other guys coming in. But there's just, again, same thing I was talking about with the running back room, which I'll talk about next, actually. I just spoiled it. But the linebacker room has a lot of dudes, not a lot of guys, not a lot of studs in there. A lot of dudes who are talented, but not guys who are really bona fide studs, not yet. So we're going to have to watch out for that. And again, the linebacker room is very, very important in this Tony White defense, folks. Very important. Again, it's a 3-3-5. They pick up a lot of the load. You're hoping that a couple guys stand up. I hope Mekhi Gabayer can. That's one of my guys. I think he's super talented. If he gets an opportunity, he will not give it back. So that's my endorsement. So that's number 6 is the linebacker group. You're hoping somebody can emerge in spring ball. And I spoiled it, but number 5 is the running back group. And I know a lot of people are going to dispute that. You're saying, Wilson, are you kidding me? Number 5, there's so many good running backs for Nebraska. You have Dante Dowdle, who's coming in from Oregon, Ramir Johnson, Emmett Johnson, Gabe Irving. And the same thing, like I said, for the linebacker room, there's a lot of dudes, not a lot of studs. These guys don't move the needle for me. Gabe Irvin, very talented player. I think it's just been unfortunate to watch his career unfold because he's had 2 season-ending injuries, and a lot of times that impacts the career of a running back. Same deal with Ramir Johnson. He's dealt with injuries his entire career. He's been underused, underdeveloped. And then you have Emmett Johnson, who has a high ceiling, just hasn't produced there. And then same deal with Dante Dowdle. So a lot of dudes, not a lot of studs. You got to figure that out. Hopefully you have a bell cow in that group. My prediction is that Dante Dowdle lives up to the expectations and is our bona fide running back 1 going into the fall. But that's something to keep your eye on. I've talked about that in the past. That is probably one of the biggest storylines, not only throughout spring ball, but throughout the entire summer. It's going to be who wins that running back spot, because, again, that's such a big part of this offense. And now the fact of the matter is that the quarterback run game, which was so heavily a part of our offense in 2023, that's going to be completely gone. Dylan Raiola is not a running quarterback. Yeah, he has the ability to make a couple plays outside the pocket, but you don't want to have him running the option consistently. So there's going to be a lot more focus on running backs actually running the football. So, again, you're hoping somebody can emerge there. So that was my first 4 there. We went 8-5. Now let's get into the top 4 positional groups on the team. Starting off with the secondary. This secondary group, super talented. There's a lot of guys in there I feel really good about. You lose a couple key players, whether that's Omar Brown, who was, a lot of people had him under the radar. He was probably our best player on defense the last couple of games of the year. He was balling out. You also lose Quentin Newsome, who was a stud on defense for a very long time, was very consistent. But other than that, you return a lot of good players. Tommy Hill is one of the best returning corners in college football. He played awesome last year. You return Malcolm Hartzog, who, again, there's a lot of people who love him, a lot of people who don't love him. I mean, I'm kind of both on Malcolm Hartzog, but you return him at that safety spot. You also return Marquez Buford, who's a very good player, who unfortunately was out a lot of last year with injury. Deshaun Singleton's back. So, again, you return a lot of players there. You also have Evan Cooper coaching that group, who is one of our better positional coaches. So, feel really good about the secondary. You need it to be good. Honestly, it did underperform a little bit last year, especially at the end of the season. So, you're hoping it can bounce back. And then you have a couple additions to that room, whether that's Bly Hill, who is transfer from St. Francis, who not a lot of people have talked about, but Matt Rule feels really good about him coming in and producing right away. And then you have a couple true freshmen, a couple redshirt freshmen. Mario Buford's a guy who I project to be in the mix to play as a true freshman, along with Ethan Nation, who played last year. I believe he burned his redshirt, but Ethan Nation, one of the more physically gifted corners we've seen from the Nebraska program in a long time. I expect Ethan Nation to be a stud this year. So feel great about that secondary. The only reason why it's 4th and not any bit higher is the fact that you lose a couple guys there and a couple guys have to step up. So you might just put 2 and 2 together. The last 3 positional groups remaining: O-line, D-line, wide receivers. Man, that feels good to say that 2 of our top 3 positional groups are the trenches. So let's go and talk about the O-line, which ranks as number 3. And really, this is an O-line which sneakily got so much better last year as the year progressed. And really, I'm going to give my props to the O-line coach, Donovan Raiola. A lot of people wanted him to be fired after Scott Frost left, me included. I wanted him to be fired. I thought, it was kind of a questionable hire to begin with, and he proved everybody wrong, including myself. He was awesome last year. He developed this group. They're looking very good. And let me just run through your projected starting 5 for the O-line. Turner Corcoran, who is going into his fifth year, really got better last year. Micah Mazuka, transfer from Florida, started basically every game for them. Justin Evans-Jenkins, who was a stud last year. He played a lot, started a couple times. You feel good about him starting. Then you have Ben Scott starting at center, who was really good. And then Bryce Benhart, who is probably one of the most criticized players in the history of Nebraska football. Let's just call it what it is. And Bryce Benhart was also very good last year in the last couple of games. So Bryce Benhart also getting a lot better. And that didn't even include some of our better offensive linemen who are on the bench. Teddy Prohaska, I don't project him to start. He's going to be your swing tackle. Henry Letufsky is also going to be a depth piece. And then you have Gunnar Gatula. So there's some really good players off the bench too. So this O-line, not only is it looking very talented in that starting 5, you have some really good depth pieces. You really feel good if some players get injured. So, man, this O-line, guys, very, very solid. It's getting better rapidly. I expect this to be probably one of the better units in the Big Ten this year. So feel great about that O-line. So now wide receivers and D-line. Which one will get number 1? We're not going to talk about them yet. We'll get to number 2, and number 2 will be the wide receivers. So, man, right off the gate, I love the transfers we got in that room, whether that's Jamal Banks or Isaiah Nair. Super talented players, guys who have produced at the highest level before. Jamal Banks is a player, when I was looking over his film, when I made all my videos about him, I said, this is a player that if he had better quarterback play, he would be in the NFL draft potentially as a day 1, day 2 type of guy. Instead, he didn't have good quarterback play. He entered the transfer portal, and look where he is now. This is one of those plug-and-play guys like a Samori Toure, like a Trey Palmer, who is a 1K receiver for Nebraska this year. So feel good about Jamal Banks. Feel good about Isaiah Nair. And then you have some very, very high upside second-year players, whether that's Malachi Coleman, who we all know and love, right? Lincoln kid. We have Jalen Lloyd, an Omaha kid, right? Who both of those guys run 4.4s, even 4.3s. Track kids, super athletically gifted. And then you have a couple other guys who are redshirting, like a Jaden Doss perhaps, that you feel really good about producing. And then, of course, you have some true freshmen there as well. So this receiver room is looking great. The only thing I'm going to say about the receiver room is that, one, they have an inexperienced receiver coach. We all know that Garrett McGuire, very, very young. We like his upside as a coach, but he is inexperienced. And number 2 is the fact that we've hyped up this receiver room before, whether that was in the Scott Frost era or Mike Riley era, and it never led up to expectations. We're hoping that doesn't happen this year, and we're hoping that Matt Rule and Marcus Satterfield's offense utilizes the wide receiver room like it should be. So that was number 2. Let's get to number 1, the D-line. And man, that feels good to say. For the longest time, guys, I've been waiting to say the D-line is the best positional group on this team. For the first time, I can say so. I mean, very, very good D-line. Let's start off with the interior. You're returning Nash Hutmucker and Ty Robinson for their senior seasons, coming off the best years of their career. Those guys are going to be staples inside. Feel great about those two returning. Not only that, not only do you have experienced older players, you have younger players coming back, whether that's Cameron Lenhart or Prince Emmanuel, who are coming off 2 of the best true freshman seasons in college football at that edge rusher spot. You also throw in Riley Van Poppel, who burned his red shirt because he was super good his true freshman year. James Williams, who played good limited rotation. Jamari Butler, Chief Borders, a couple other guys. Just a great D-line. This is a testament to the work Tony White has done, to the work that our entire defense has done. And again, it's looking very, very promising. And last year, a lot of the times, it was a very, very good run-stopping defense. The problem was it wasn't great in the pass pro. There wasn't a lot of great edge rushers on this team. And you're hoping that, again, Princewell can take that next step. Cameron Lenhart can take that next step. And a couple of guys you can throw in there. Man, I'm excited about this D-line. It's very physical, but not only is it physical, it's fast, it's hard-hitting. and it's going to go and come after your quarterback. So D-line is number 1, and that's going to wrap up my rankings 1 to 8. So let me know what you think down below. If there were a couple you'd switch in and out, some players that you might think are going to prove me wrong, that they're going to shoot up their positional group a little bit better. So we're going to talk about this positional group ranking a little bit more as the offseason goes on. We'll probably make a new one right before the actual season, but wanted to come out here and make one right now before spring ball so we can all keep our eyes on these positions going forward. So again, let me know what you think down below. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel if you have not already. And as always, folks, go Big Red, go Matt Rule, and see you in the next one.